worked as a grassroots community organizer, trainer, and strategist since 2000. She has worked on online grassroots strategy with groups such as Get Equal and Standing on the Side of Love. Jay co-founded One Struggle, One Fight, an LGBT organization dedicated to fighting intersecting oppressions. Last year, she was nominated for the New Organizing Institute's Most Valuable Organizer Award for her work on the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, ENDA, a bill to protect LGBT Americans from workplace discrimination. She specializes in the intersection of online and offline grassroots advocacy. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. It's really great to see everyone here. I'm really pleased to be here. As the bio sort of says, I started doing online media pretty early and have the opportunity to sort of like, you know, grow up with all these new tools being introduced, and also sort of, you know, growing up through the lens of also living in the closet in a really rural Northern California town, and starting to learn how to use a computer because I was really isolated and I was really sad. So I have had the very huge privilege to organize in many communities since then, in both the online and the offline sphere. Just for background, I also have a degree in community organizing, and I'm a consultant for a lot of organizations. So I also just spent a year on the inside working in actually DC government, trying to learn how to better target social media activism, specifically to local governments. So gonna hopefully be doing a lot more training around that in the future. So what I'm gonna do is give y'all some definitions, because sometimes the problem with getting into social media, part of the reason that it's so scary is that sometimes we say social media and we don't really know what we're talking about, or one person thinks we're talking about something else. So I'm gonna give you some definitions, and not because like I think I'm a law on social media definitions, right? They're sort of one of those things like identity that are really slippery to define, and that's why they're amazing. But because we need to know sort of like a general idea about what we're talking about. And then I'm going to give you some stats and some points of philosophy so you all know sort of like how to make good decisions about doing online campaigns and some offline work too. And I'm going to give you some sort of like ideas about how to take some action in your community and really get some of this stuff that you've heard about so far in this conference like going, and how to start making some change. And then we're going to talk really quickly about some tools that are out there, and hopefully you'll get an idea of sort of how to use them. So I also went through the State of the Sexual Freedom Report, as I hope all of you will, sort of like last night really late, and sort of like I looked at the moving forward parts, specifically so that I could sort of, you know, target what I'm talking about and pull out some of those campaigns and really start to flesh out like how can social media be specifically targeting this campaign and what can we do with social media on this. So hopefully I'll bring out some of that too. First, I just want to give you some statistics. And it's not because I think you'll remember the statistics. I don't think that people remember statistics. I think they're often quite boring. But because I want you to understand the scale and importance of social media. And it's something that's fairly easy to forget when we're trying to dodge our parents on Facebook. And really also because this is sort of like the first time in human history that there's an opportunity for millions of people at the same time to actively participate in a conversation. And I think that makes this a pretty amazing time to be in, and a pretty amazing time to be an advocate for social change in too. So I'm just going to run through some of these. So did you all know that 20% of the searches on Google every day have never been searched before? That's correct. Some people, go figure, still search a search on Google that has never ever been searched before. So next stat, there are more than 3.5 billion pieces of content, billion with a B, which includes web links, news stories, blog posts, etc., shared each week on Facebook. 3.5 billion pieces of content. I'll say that again.
A week?
A week. Just on Facebook. We're just talking about Facebook. We're not including Twitter. That's just Facebook. 43% of all online consumers are social media fans or followers. So 43% of them are using social media in one form or another. And the average American internet user watches 30 minutes of video online per day. 30 minutes of video online. It's true. I have a source. If you want to ask me later about sources, I have them. So how many folks are on Facebook? Who knows? That's great. How many million more people besides us in this room are on Facebook? Anybody know? Very good. Actually, that's only the statistic for active users of Facebook. 800 million. So what's the population of the United States? 350-ish? Yeah, so it's a lot bigger, right? We got a lot bigger audience out there. So, right, 800 million. More than 50% of Facebook's users, so this is like, Facebook categorizes like people who just sit there on Facebook as not active users. They're not even included in the 800 million, right? More than 50% of those active users log onto Facebook in a given day. So half of that 800 million, right? So 400 million are logging in daily. And on Facebook, there are over 900 million objects that people interact with. So pages, groups, events, community pages, 900 million of them out there. And the average person, by the way, likes about 80. So that includes community pages, groups, and events. And more than 2 billion posts are liked and commented on per day. That's a lot of stuff, right? I could continue. I have a couple more about Twitter. There are, about 200 million Twitter users, although that's a tougher one to pin down since Twitter has a lot of accounts that just sit there. So, I mean, as far as Twitter, in terms of tweets per second, do you all know what the all-time high for tweets per second was? It's not Michael Jackson, it's not Justin Bieber. Iran? No, it's not actually Iran either.
Ashton Kutcher.
It was a what?
It wasn't my name, right?
Actually, it was Ricky, yes. Actually, Michael Jackson was second. The day Michael Jackson died, June 25th, 2009, is actually the second place at 456 tweets per second. But the highest, right, Twitter post per second record actually is for 6,939 tweets per second, actually came after midnight in Japan on New Year's Day. Exactly. So we'll come back to these later. And in a week, Twitter users also send about 1 billion tweets, so just so you know. So there's a lot of stuff out there, essentially, right? I mean, these statistics are staggering, no matter how you look at them. So how can we draw attention to our stuff, right? How can we draw attention to the advocacy actions that we want people to take so that we can create social change? How do we build relationships with core supporters so that they can go out and recruit more core supporters themselves, which is how you grow a movement online and offline, for that matter. So I'm going to give you a couple philosophy points in order to do that and to do it with social justice, because I believe that social justice and technology should go hand in hand all the time, should and can. A brief note before we start that we don't really have time to talk internet privacy and net neutrality right now, unfortunately. I can't go into that, but just know that both of these issues really form the foundation for sexual freedom, and particularly for the sexual freedom of speech on the internet. And also please note that they're issues that many mainstream organizations, particularly in the LGBT movement, are grappling with right now, and many of them are on the wrong side of that issue. So just something I want you all to hold. Okay, so A, online advocacy is an ongoing conversation. It never stops, ever. You don't think of your online narrative as sort of like a series of tweets. You never say a tweet. You say a step in this narrative that includes your theory of change and what you're trying to change. So think of all your sort of like posts and all the things that you put up there as part of an ongoing stream of what you're telling the world, right? They should all fit into that narrative. And just really quickly, let me define social media before we move on. So it's basically a widening group of tools and sites that are driven by user participation and user-created content. It's a pretty simple definition. So it includes social networking sites like Twitter and Facebook, social bookmarking sites like Delicious, and a variety of other user-driven tools. And when I say variety, I really mean variety. Like there's a lot of them out there. Like there's so many, it's kind of scary. But what we're gonna focus on mostly is sort of like Facebook and Twitter, right? So the idea is like, don't get overwhelmed by everything that's out there. Like figure out what your audience uses, figure out what you understand and what works for you, and use that, and that's okay. And the main thing that I want y'all to remember about social media is that it's a two-way conversation, right? So when organizations try to use social media like it's a hierarchy and like there's only one-way flow of information, right? Like it's like the Encyclopedia Britannica model, right? Like here's your dictionary, use it, bye. The 2.0 version of the encyclopedia is like Wikipedia, right? So people are creating their own pages, they're commenting on the pages. It's a two-way conversation, that's what I want y'all to remember. And that's actually where the 2 in 2.0 comes from. So there's 2 people having a conversation instead of 1.0, which is 1 person. That's basically just talking out in space. Exactly. Yes. So, and e-advocacy, when I say e-advocacy or online advocacy, that's basically advocacy specifically through the use of the tools that I just mentioned. Does that make sense to everybody? Kind of? Yeah? Okay, cool. So now we kind of have a language to talk about it. Awesome. Okay. So again, online advocacy, always an ongoing conversation. And then B is to always establish trust with your followers. So this is like a real world organizing tip. And a lot of the things I'm going to give you are basically really old school organizing tips that are actually still totally relevant and totally applicable to the online world with a couple of minor changes at times. So yeah, I mean, establish trust with your followers. Engage them. Tell them things. Give them your brand and your message and trust that they will carry that in a way that's best for your brand. Trust them. If they're not doing it, you can have a conversation with it later, whatever if it's problematic. But give them. You have to be able to give them your brand, give them your material, give them your petition, and trust that they will do what they need to do with it, because they will most of the time. And then, establish the trust, and people like people they trust, generally. So that'll grow out from there as well. The third thing I'll say is that the sky is not falling. So if the center of your narrative is that the apocalypse is upon us and you all must sign this internet petition or we will all experience nuclear winter within the next 24 hours, I've heard it, I swear, you need a different narrative. You really do. You really do. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen apocalyptic narrative from every movement, every community I have ever worked with. And every time I say, hey, if you tell everyone that the sky is falling, they're going to start digging a hole. They're not going to try to change the fact that the sky is falling. So it's important that we start developing narratives that center around communities' ability to succeed and the ability of communities to really come back from some of these horrible social forces that we're experiencing. Not the fact...
I have double hearing. Can you
Sure.
process as fast as you're speaking?
Yeah.
Slow down.
I'm a really fast talker, so that's really great. So what I was just saying is that it's really important that we try to get away from a sort of like apocalyptic narrative and really sort of look at solution-based, community-based narratives. And your goal with social media is always to grow, to get people deeper and deeper involved and to actually get them to take action in the real world. So this is like one of the things that I tell, highly technical people, really brilliant people, and they get really scared, right? Like, my idea with social media is to use it, grow a campaign, and turn that campaign into something that will eventually get me out of work, right? Because what we want to see is we want to see an actual social movement that can exist and survive outside just the online space. We want to see that. Even if it's decentralized and in communities and just meets up online, which is a great, great model, that's what we want. But we want people to be able to see face-to-face at times, because it really is still the most powerful form of interaction, and it's very, very difficult for a social movement to succeed without that kind of sort of like boots on the ground, as they say. Also, when asking someone to take action, there are just a couple of things that you should remember. One, your ask should be direct. So tell them exactly what you want to do. These bullet point actions, like one after the other, that doesn't work. And this is an exercise for us all in activists to have a really clear ask and a really clear action for folks. And also, it should be something personal. Have a personal story, a real human being involved in it, and elicit an emotional response. Remember the statistic I told y'all about Japan, right? This is a community of folks who is experiencing a collective emotional response to an event, a cultural, geological, whatever you want to call it, event, and it's powerful. That is the most powerful stuff that we can do. And then, as well as Michael Jackson, right? So both the number 1 and the number 2, like highest tweets per second, are both those sort of experiences. And the other one is, it's a great opportunity for us to get together and meet other like-minded folks. Many folks who feel isolated, often folks in rural areas, young folks who are queer. This is a great opportunity for them to meet other folks like them and get talking, get comfortable, and then, maybe form a group and start organizing. It's a great opportunity. There are a lot of tools out there for doing that. Okay. And then just a really quick word about storytelling. Stories are really some of the most powerful tools that activists hold. And unfortunately, I think some of the stories that are really important don't get told. Because a lot of times, particularly as health educators, we really want to just tell people the information. And that's really important and really fantastic. But if we actually want them to take action, we need to tell a narrative that they can sort of like get through and get to an end that makes them take action. What I sort of mean by this is that I could tell a person my story of self, right? I tell them my story of self. And then I get them to tell me their story of self, right? And then there's a point in which we're both feeling a little bit depressed, right? Because sometimes those stories can be a little bit depressing. Or we're feeling really happy, or we're feeling really close to each other. That is the opportunity that you have to take advantage of, because that is the highest likelihood that that person's going to take an action. And online is the greatest sort of like crux of all those things, right? So you meet people and you learn their stories, and right there you can give them an action, right? And that's what's fantastic about the internet. And e-advocacy in general. So really quickly, I'm going to go through some tools that y'all can use. And specifically, the first one I'm going to go through is petitions. So here's my take on petitions. How many people are really tired of signing online petitions? Raise your hands. Don't be scared. Yeah, me too. I'm really tired of signing online petitions. But in the interest of harm reduction, right, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about online petitions anyway, because I know that some of you will engage in petitions. So, specifically in the report, there's a couple things that I think petitions would work really well for, specifically expanding funding around the availability of sex education. I think that's a really great one. And then another thing that you can do is watch Woodhull for lots of awesome petition actions. Basically, what I want you to know about petitions is that they really can't change the underlying structure of what oppresses us, right? Petitions are like, you see a river and there are babies floating down. That's how they're how to pull the babies out, right? Right? You're not going to be able to go upstream with the petition and figure out who's throwing the babies in and have a chat with them, right? Like, you're not going to be able to do that. But they are really important anyway, right? So you all, I know you all love that analogy, didn't you? Yeah, that's what they teach you in organizing school, kids. Okay, so there are two really interesting petition sites I want to tell you about. One is signon.org. It's a new project of moveon.org. You should check it out. They'll give you like strategy and resources and training. The more petition signatures you get, it's a really interesting idea. The second one, really quickly, the White House just this week launched this is pretty interesting, an interesting petition site, their own petition site. It's called We the People. We the People. I haven't heard anything about activism coming out of it yet. There are petitions up there, but they say that the White House will consider an idea if it reaches 5,000 within the next 30 days. But within the 30 days that the petition is started. So check that out. There are plenty of other sites that you can use. Some of them are site-specific. Facebook and Twitter each have their own. And then the other tool we've talked about already is personality and personal narrative. And again, I cannot stress enough the importance of personal narrative and telling your stories and then giving an action or giving something that that person can actively do at the end of the story. And finally, I just want to talk about media story intervention, which I think covers a lot of what's sort of in the report, where we talk about, the morality police. How do we confront the morality police? Look at all of these, narratives about marriage being for sex and being a sex relationship and the government being in marriage. This is a great way, particularly Facebook, to take these articles and engage with them with your own commentary and share them and have your friends share them as well. And even, you can create an action or something and actually target the media channel and the media as well from that as well. So that's a great one. It's a great place to fight shaming. Hey, look at this article that's shaming this woman. Like, this is really messed up. Let's call up this paper and tell them how shaming is really bad. So it's really, really effective for those kind of actions. Again, simple, highly targeted, personal hook. Or a local hook, too, also works really well if you're doing local stuff. So I sort of reached the end of my time here by far. The other thing I want to say about the internet, just really quickly, is that a lot of people I keep seeing this, a lot of people think that the internet is like a place that erases race and class divisions. This is completely and utterly incorrect. In fact, there's a lot of research to suggest that it actually exacerbates existing class and race differences, and that's something very, very important to understand. We're not going to bring about the end of racism and classism by surfing the internet. Not going to happen. Going to take a little bit more work. So, y'all, don't be afraid of social media. And, you know, it's not gonna hurt you. Like, there's a lot out there, but just pick what you like, pick what works for you. And if you have any questions, you can always talk to me.